Stages power meter, it divides a lot of opinion, and I've had mine now for 2 years, pretty much exactly to the day. So I wanted to give you a review, the pros and cons about it, and whether or not you should purchase one. So I think the first main issue that people have with it is its waterproofing. People complain that it's broken after they've gone out a couple of times in the rain with it. And my experience of that, I've got the Generation 2 by the way, so this is just for my version, this is Generation 2. I live in Manchester. I have been out in torrential downpours. I've been caught out. I've not gone out purposely to ride in the rain. Like, why would anyone do that? But I've been out and I've been out in a thunderstorm where it was literally flooded. I don't know how the bottom bracket survived it, to be honest, because it was just torrential rain. So it's been out in a lot of rain. It's pissing it down again. The one thing that I do when I get back is I dry it over with a towel. That's the simplest thing. I just get in and I dry it straight away. That's probably the first thing that I do, and especially on that day when it was torrential. I got in and wiped it over with a towel just to dry it off. Also take the back off it, leave that out and let it out overnight just to dry out. I think people expect, because it's like a crank arm and it's sealed, they think that it's gonna be fine. But you have to think of it like any other electronical piece of equipment, like your phone. If you were out in the rain and your phone got wet, what would you do? You would dry it off, so just dry it off. That's the main issue that I feel like people talk about when they talk about stages. I mean, there's the other issues that I'll talk about in a little bit, but I think that's the main one. But you just have to look after it. For me, like, I've really looked after it. It's one of my most amazing pieces of equipment, I think, for the bike. So let's just get that one out of the way, the main issue with that. Why would you want a power meter? So for me, a power meter is just a really good gauge of what power I'm putting out, and it helps me then figure out how long I can hold that power. And for different types of climbs. So if say it's an endurance day, like Sunday, I rode 205k. So I love seeing on my watts there, just trying to keep them very low and very steady throughout so that I'm not going too hard and I'm going to burn out. It's also a really good way of gauging a set segment, so like a Strava segment. I remember when I first got the power meter, I think I must have taken like 8 minutes off one of my personal bests on a climb at Dovestones. I did a couple of videos about that, I will link them below. But it was just amazing to be able to control your power rather than just going out and just thrashing it because you burn out. It's about steadily pushing yourself, using that power, and I just think power meters are incredible. Specifically the stages, why I went for the stages is because it is compatible with my bike. So I've got 105 on both my bikes, so the crank arm that I've got is the 105 version, the Stages 105 version, and it's compatible between both bikes, like I've just said, so I can swap between bikes if I need to. With some different power meters, you can only really have them on one bike because they are the whole thing, like the whole system. Like, you can't just swap them between bikes so easily. And one of the other things that I really like is the batteries. So you don't have to charge it up, you just literally put a little battery in. It's like a 2032 battery, and you can do it anywhere. So even if you're out and about and your battery goes, you can just swap it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of disposable batteries, but that's the one thing that I do use a disposable battery for. So they're small, light, cheap, easily available, so that's a great bonus, I think, to having a Stages. So the cons, let's talk about the cons. They are expensive. I mean, that was around £400, and a lot of people be like, oh my god, I'm not gonna pay £400 for a power meter, I'm not a professional. I don't think you have to be a professional to want a power meter on your bike. I think they are such a good tool, such a good training tool, and I feel like so many people spend thousands and thousands of pounds on expensive flashy bikes and they don't have a power meter. I mean, my power meter is on like a £400 bike, £500 bike. Even though I've got an expensive carbon one, you know the story with that, I love my alloy one better. But that training tool as a whole, with a cheaper bike, with a power meter, far outweighs a very expensive bike without a power meter. And that's just facts, because how can you gauge what you're doing by just thrashing it, or I just think it's so much better to have a power meter, personally. Sometimes as well, another con I've noticed is when it's on Zwift, and I'm not using because I've got a tax flux, because I'm being coached, I've been asked to use the power meter that I would use indoor and outdoor, so I'm using the stages, and the last week it just seems to be dropping out slightly, and I don't know why that is. I've been using the ANT stick, so I'm going to try and use Bluetooth and see if that helps with any of the dropouts. But yeah, if not, I might try and get an extender cable so that it's closer to the actual power meter. Hopefully that will help. But I don't want to like criticise that too much, because that could be a number of different things, and I will keep you updated with that, because if it is the stages that are dropping out, then that's not good. But I've never had dropouts when I've been on the road. It is just with this issue with the flux system and the Zwifting and that whole thing, so I will see. But in fairness, I've been Zwifting probably since November, and this is November, December, January, February, March. It's like 4 months, and this is the first time that it's happened, so I can't slam it too much. I can't be too hard on it, because I need to figure out what that is. So another con that some people might think is a con is that it's only one-sided, so it's a one-sided power meter. So you've got other alternatives, such as the info crank, which are dual, so you can see your power from your left and your right. For me, that's not worth an extra, how much are they? They're about £1,000, I think. To me, that's not worth an extra £600. It's just not. As long as I've got an average of what I'm doing, then I feel like that's good enough. I mean, by all means, my friend Darius, he's got an info crank and he absolutely freaking loves it. But for me, I'd rather just spend that on something else. I'd rather go on a holiday. I'd rather go on a cycling holiday than do that. And I think that's the thing that I like with stages, is that it is compatible with an info crank. It's just on one bike. It's a big hassle to try and change that over to another bike, whereas with the stages, if you have got a couple of bikes that you like changing, like a summer bike and a winter bike, it is very easily changeable. I couldn't ride without a power meter now. I'm obsessed with power. I'm not obsessed with it, but I love seeing that, and I love seeing myself progress through it, because that's another thing that you are able to actually track in data how you are performing. And I think that's really important, rather than it just being like a segment time, because so many other things are variable on that. So if you're trying to get a good time on say a set road or a set segment, so you've got wind, like that's a massive variable. If you've got a lot of headwind, you're not going to get the time. You can't just measure it on the time of that segment, because there are so many other factors. So you've got a lot of headwind, that's going to slow you down, but your power still might be there. You still might do a better power than you have done before, which means you're working harder, but you've got the headwind, so the actual time will be longer. I'm not a professional, and I'm sure you're not a professional watching this, but I don't think they are just for professionals. I think power meters should just be on bikes, because I think they're just so beneficial and helpful to short climbs, to short segments, to long endurance rides. I just think they're a great tool, and if you can afford one, then I would definitely go for that rather than an expensive bike without one. I think that's pretty much sums up my view on power meters this video. So yeah, 2 years, still working fine, touch wood, it's still working great, and a great tool.